Great. Yeah, no, thanks again, Jim. And just going into some of the survey responses that everyone gave, it was in the hundreds that we had. Now, this one, Jim, I believe this may have been from your study, your recent study, but it is preliminary. So I wanted to note we did one graph off of your recent study, just giving you a lot of ideas. Why are we not using data analytics in general? But what I found really interesting from this was that when you look at it, you can see here that the green box there, or pie piece, is 16%, data not easily retrieved. Data owners are reluctant to provide data is 5%, and then 25% data not available for all audits. So, we're looking at like 50% or so related to just data. And then another 20%, why not, is it's not integrated into the audit process. So this is all of the planning stuff that we're going to talk about today. It covers about 70% of the reason why data analytics is not used based on this other survey. But now, going into your survey for today, who is here today? These are the size of audit departments, just to give you an idea that we're not heavily weighted to large-scale, 100-person audit shops or to one-person audit shops. It's a really nice mixture that AuditNet reaches in that, again, it's 1 to 1,000 kind of thing, but it's all very nicely organized there. And, with that in mind, what data analytic do you use? And I was kind of surprised to see that ACL was 50% of the puzzle pie. A lot of people, again, maybe, Excel and Excel add-ins we somehow missed in here, but it really looks like, when people are thinking data analytics, while Excel is a good work paper tool, basically it is not taking up as much, whereas ACL does have a pretty nice majority. IDEA is also heavily used, 14%. I mean, it's a remarkable figure. And then there's none, which is there as well. So there are some departments that are not using data analytics, and hopefully today's presentation will help with that. As we look at data analytics in the audit plan, and it may be a little bit hard to read here, but down at the below, from the left-hand side, it's never, then sometimes, then most of the time, then all of the time is on the right side. So you can see just from the chart there that the never and the sometimes, not only is it a large percentage of the total, but I find it interesting that it's not so much it's weighted to anyone. I mean, an over 25 audit department shop has, a sometimes chance of running data analytics, as does a 10 to 25 or a 2 to 5. I mean, they're all about in the same ballpark, which I just found interesting looking at it. But when we look at most of the time and all of the time, you do see some of the larger departments having more of a need for it. It kind of goes up almost as you go up the column there. But I think that's really just because as you get into larger companies, there's just larger data sets to play with. It's harder to do an audit without actually downloading the data. But again, it really isn't that far off of someone that is in a smaller audit department. Now, the most of the time, all the time, is not being used that much in the audit planning phase, as you can see here. And what I meant by this, if hopefully people saw this, was that this was more in the overall audit planning, of the year, so that when you're planning out your entire audit plan for the entire year, what you're how much are you using data analytics there. And I want to talk to you about how we can use the general ledger, how we can use accounts payable files. You need to get them across the entire organization, but there's a lot there that you can do. Now, getting into an actual audit planning, like, I'm doing an audit of inventory in the Netherlands. What is the stratification of that? In there, what we're finding is that it does become much more of an ad hoc depending on the audit, which makes sense. I mean, in a lot of ways, you're not going to use data analytics on all audits when there's no point to in some. But it is interesting to see the all audits in a year people and the majority of the audits in a year people where it was at least more clear to them that they are spending a lot of time on data analytics in each audit. And again, data analytics, as much as ACL and IDEA made up 65% of that puzzle pie, it doesn't have to be. I mean, it could just be Excel, a little bit of Access. You know, there are other tools that you can utilize that may not be as costly or take as much time to learn, yet you can still get the same benefits out of. But again, I just thought that this was interesting as well, that you know, there is more data analytics being used on an audit-by-audit basis, but not in the overall. Now, taking a look at data analytics to, you know, better understand a process flow at a company, you know, when is that used? And again, it's more of a sometimes and never than a most of the time, all of the time. But I think that that's what you need to do. I mean, I think if you are auditing revenue across the entire organization, you need to think about how can we, you know, do that, and do that across the entire organization, and understand, therefore, based on that process flow, as we're doing an audit of this company or that company, how that will play into that particular audit. Most companies do have a pretty standardized way of handling things, so you know, there is a kind of some benefit there, learning curve benefit of doing it for the whole company if you can do that. So a lot of companies, their data files are all over the place, and hence it is hard to bring it all together to do that analysis. But again, just find it interesting looking here that it is very much the same as how much is this being done in the audit planning phase of the organization.